Tonight, Irene. The name means peace. The hurricane means business. We're tracking the storm as it takes aim at the East Coast with reports from Mark Strassman, Jim Axelrod, and David Bernard. Chip Reed tells us the earthquake did more damage than we thought. Barry Peterson in Tripoli walks us through Gaddafi's inner sanctum. We'll give you an early look at the new 9/11 memorial. And as America opens another memorial, Byron Pitts finds the photographer who immortalized a king.
What I most wanted to capture in Doc was that inner light.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
Good evening. The first hurricane of the season is on a collision course with the East Coast. Here's the view from space. Irene looks like an organized storm around a well-defined eye. This is the track the past 12 hours. The hurricane has grown to a Category 3. 120-mile-an-hour winds and heavy rain have damaged homes, knocked out power, and touched off flooding on Caribbean islands. Irene is on track to hit the East Coast this weekend from North Carolina to New York. We have correspondents in the hurricane zone tonight. First, Mark Strassman in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina.
Off North Carolina's coast, Scott, evacuations began before daybreak, and with each passing hour, more people are leaving as Irene moves closer, the first major hurricane on the East Coast in years.
It's heavy.
With a new generator and groceries, Patricia Cardwell's afraid Irene could be North Carolina's Katrina.
I'm here by myself and it's just scary.
But Cardwell's more scared no hotel would take her dog Zach.
Where's your toys?
So she's staying put at her home in Wilmington.
I won't go. That's my dog. He's the only thing I got here.
Mandatory evacuations for 3,000 tourists started today on Ocracoke Island, off North Carolina's Outer Banks, accessible only by boat. Melanie Gordon and Patrice Parks put up no fight.
Mandatory. We didn't have a choice. We had to go.
No charge for the ferry, though, back.
That was cool.
Edna McKelvey headed in the opposite direction, back to Ocracoke to pick up her mother.
It's mandatory for the residents tomorrow. And she's elderly and she has heart problems and pacemaker.
860,000 North Carolinians could live within Irene's reach. Hurricane Fran was the last Category 3 storm to sock this state. It killed 14 people here and caused $2.4 billion in damages. And Governor Bev Perdue wants to avoid a repeat.
We are preparing for the worst. Get that plan together today.
Patricia Cardwell has a plan. She's just not convinced it's the right one.
You still don't know what's going to happen. That thing could strengthen even more than what they're saying it's going to be.
Governor Perdue here has the National Guard on standby. FEMA is already in place. And by Saturday morning, Scott, Irene in all its fury could be here too.
Thanks, Mark. CBS News hurricane consultant David Bernard is in Miami. David, what do you think? North Carolina by Saturday?
Well, it looks like a distinct possibility, Scott. This could be a very dangerous storm. Let's start by where the storm could be tomorrow, possibly a Category 4 hurricane in the northern Bahamas. And there's that approach to the North Carolina coastline you were talking about by Saturday afternoon as a major hurricane. The next big question is, what happens beyond that as we go into Sunday? We're looking at the possibility of a strong Category 2 hurricane approaching Long Island or possibly portions of New England.
David, is there anything that can weaken this storm?
Well, the main thing that we look at with hurricanes, especially in the area that we're talking about right now, are the water temperatures. And the waters right now are around 87 degrees off of Miami. That's why this storm is exploding. But watch what happens along the track, Scott. As the storm moves to the north, it's going to move toward colder water north of North Carolina, where temperatures are only in the 70s. We usually look for a temperature of 80 degrees for that good hurricane fuel. That'll slow down the storm enough. But a Category 2 hurricane into the northeast, that can mean big trouble. Everybody needs to pay close attention.
Thank you, David. As David just said, this storm may be headed farther north than you might usually expect of a hurricane. And Jim Axelrod tells us a lot of homeowners are not prepared.
It's been more than 25 years since the last hurricane ripped through Long Island. But homeowners here in Long Beach have been paying higher flood insurance rates for the last 3 years. Charlie Theophan is the town manager.
What's flood insurance cost somebody in Long Beach?
I'm going to say that if you're lucky, it's costing you about $1,700 a year.
And what's your deductible?
Your deductible is probably at least $5,000, at least.
So how does that sit with people?
Not well.
After Hurricane Katrina inflicted $80 billion in damage, insurance companies dropped hundreds of thousands of policyholders along the East Coast. Many were forced to buy more expensive policies or look to the federal government for coverage.
Virtually no private insurers are writing the policies anymore. They're only through FEMA. They're at FEMA's rates, at FEMA's terms, and it's pretty much take it or leave it.
Population and property values here are among the highest in the nation. According to FEMA, policyholders along the Northeast coast are insured for more than $124 billion in flood protection.
You don't look at market value, you look at what is it going to cost to rebuild these homes, and that's what property casualty insurers look at. And if there were to be a major storm that were to hit Long Island owing to its dense population and expensively built real estate, it could be a major event.
It's water that causes the most damage in a hurricane, but just a fraction of Northeast homeowners have proper flood coverage. According to the most recent survey, just 30% have flood insurance in high-risk areas. The number is even smaller for those who live on higher ground. Insurance adjusters expect Irene to be expensive even if it arrives here just as a tropical storm. And natural disasters have already cost insurance companies $90 million so far this year, 20% more than the last 2 years combined. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, Long Beach, New York.
They're still adding up the cost of yesterday's surprising East Coast earthquake. Chip Reed found there was more damage than we first thought.
Near the quake epicenter in Mineral, Virginia, Governor Bob McDonnell said it was a great blessing that no one was seriously injured.
The damage is more widespread and more significant than the preliminary reports.
Nearby at the North Anna Nuclear Power Station, both reactors remain offline while they're checked for damage. The strongest East Coast earthquake since World War II was caught by security cameras at a Virginia convenience store and at a liquor store in District Heights, Maryland. In the nation's capital, the Washington Monument remained closed while inspectors analyzed cracks near the very top. And at Washington National Cathedral, the tops of 3 spires, gargoyles, and other decorative features came crashing to the ground. One lesson of this quake,
I can't get through, AT&T's down,
is the same lesson learned on 9/11 when cell phone systems became overloaded, hampering first responders. Nearly 10 years later, Congress is still fighting over how to solve the problem. Meanwhile, at the National Zoo, many animals, including flamingos, lemurs, and great apes, sounded the earthquake alarm before humans felt a thing, according to senior curator Brandy Smith.
Our gorillas, actually, seconds before some of our gorillas and some of our orangutans took to the trees.
As for the Washington Monument, Scott, we're told there is a 4-foot crack near the very top. It will be closed indefinitely while they figure out how to fix it.
Thanks, Chip. Steve Jobs suddenly and unexpectedly stepped down today as the CEO of Apple, the company that he helped found in a garage and grew into one of the biggest technology corporations in the world. Ben Tracy has our story.
And thank you very much.
In his trademark turtleneck, Steve Jobs has defined Apple for more than a decade as its CEO. But now Steve Jobs says it's time to go. In a statement late today, Jobs wrote, "I have always said if there ever came a day when I could no longer meet my duties and expectations as Apple's CEO, I would be the first to let you know. Unfortunately, that day has come." Jobs' health has been an issue for years. He's lost considerable weight and in 2009 announced this.
As some of you may know, about 5 months ago, I had a liver transplant.
Jobs started Apple in his parents' garage in 1976. The company focused on personal computers until 2001, when Jobs unveiled something called the iPod.
You're going to just be blown away with how beautiful it is and how thin it is.
Then came the iPhone and most recently the iPad. Jobs demanded Apple products be user-friendly and smartly designed.
Some people say, well, Steve was the marketing guy. It was deeper than that. He had a very profound aesthetic sense of what people want.
Apple executive Tim Cook will now take over as CEO. Jobs will remain an Apple employee and tonight was named chairman of the board. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Los Angeles.
In Libya, a $2 million price has been placed on the head of Muammar Gaddafi. While the dictator hasn't been seen, we did hear from him overnight. In a defiant audio message, he called the rebels devils and traitors, and he vowed to fight on. With the Battle of Tripoli still raging, our Barry Peterson got inside Gaddafi's abandoned home.
Gaddafi's forces are making their last stand in the heart of the city, and the rebels fought to maintain their grip on the fallen dictator's compound.
The compound continues to take fire. We're not sure from where. We can hear bullets ricocheting overhead. And every now and then the rebels return fire. We're not quite sure they know what they're shooting at, but clearly there's still a lot of fight left for this piece of real estate.
The army of the man who once terrorized a country is now cornered. Most are holed up in a city park using trees for cover. And this may be the dubious backbone of what's left of Gaddafi's ragtag army, mercenaries. This man from the Sudan.
Why are they in Libya?
Kill the people Libyan.
They are hired by Gaddafi.
Yes, yes.
At the compound, Gaddafi made this mansion into a museum, celebrating his survival from the U.S. air attack on his stronghold in 1986. In the lobby hang some of the spent bombs from the attack.
American.
Upstairs, an opulent private apartment preserved under thick glass.
In this room, what appears to be a kind of a shrine, a bed, almost like a museum piece. You can see now, scarred from the battle to take the compound.
Next door, a desk, also glassed in, also shot up.
When Muammar Gaddafi stood on this balcony and ranted about his rule, he looked out across a country that he controlled with an iron fist. This is the view now.
In the tent where he received foreign guests, rebels now say prayers of thanks for their victory. But victory comes at a high price, the innocent casualties of war.
Most of the casualties here is by snipers, yes.
Like 11-year-old Allah Salim with a sniper bullet in her brain. She got out of bed this morning, said her mother, and the bullet hit her. It took 6 hours to free up an operating room for a desperate try at saving a child who had no part in this war, only the misfortune to get in its deadly, random path. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Tripoli, Libya.
In Washington, people are getting their first look this week at the new Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. It'll be dedicated Sunday, the 48th anniversary of his I Have a Dream speech. Tonight, Byron Pitts introduces us to the photographer who captured some of the images of that historic day.
August 28, 1963. 250,000 people in one place who heard about a dream.
Wow, look at all those people.
Yeah.
Bob Edelman was there too, carrying his camera, intent on capturing the march and the mood.
There was a sense of enthusiasm and confidence that things were going to change.
To catch that feeling, he wanted to be close to the podium and Dr. King.
I snuck up there. I crawled up there. I ducked up there. I knew that his speech would be, nobody did it better than he did.
Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee.
The only photographer on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial that day, Edelman snapped one of history's most iconic images of the man he called Doc.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
You know, I think that picture was one of the greatest moments in my life, certainly in Doc's life.
Edelman had spent nearly a decade documenting the brutality of Southern segregation. And he recalled showing King his photo of a group of young people bearing the harsh blows of hatred.
He looked at it for a long time, he stared at it, and then he said that he was startled that out of so much pain, some beauty came. Imagine talking that poetically. I mean, but that's the way he could talk.
I'm tired of shooting. I'm tired of hate. I'm tired of selfishness.
Edelman went on to take hundreds of images of King, his passion, scenes of protest and reflection.
What were you trying to capture with your pictures?
What I most wanted to capture in Doc was that inner light.
Edelman also saw through his lens a man with a premonition.
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place.
He was always looking around. He didn't know where or when, but he knew it was coming.
It was your sense that he knew?
Oh, yeah. He talked about it quite openly.
Nearly 50 years after King's assassination, Edelman is still pained by the loss.
Yes, well.
I'm struck by these images seem to move you still.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, he was the greatest person I knew.
Bob Edelman is 80 now, retired in Florida. But the man he captured with his lens never ages. It never loses his power to move. Byron Pitts, CBS News, Miami.
And in the very place where the Twin Towers stood, a new memorial is coming to life. That story's next. Finally tonight, we came across something today that we thought you'd like to see. We were at Ground Zero in Lower Manhattan working on our coverage of the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And while we were there, they were running a test of one of the two reflecting pools. It was our first chance to see and hear what the memorial will be like. Water cascades down black granite walls into the pools, which are built in the footprints of the Twin Towers. Each pool is an acre in size and 50 feet deep. The names of the people who died in the towers are etched in bronze around the perimeters. 2,983 names. The etchings are beautiful, but the people who built the waterfalls asked us not to show the names so that the families can be the first to see them when the memorial opens on September 11th. These are the largest man-made waterfalls in America. They were designed 7 years ago, and we thought it's been worth the wait. Doesn't seem that long ago somehow. That's the CBS Evening News. For all of us at CBS News all around the world, good night.